What's going on, everybody? Is it Brick MMA back for UFC 317 International Fight Week? Finally, the time has come for my King Charles to bring it back. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about the. I do want to start from the bottom of the card first, talking about those, giving my prediction and picks up until the main event fight. So starting out first, we had Jonathan Denise versus Alvin Hines in the early prelims. Alvin Hines is stepping in on short notice, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm low key high on Jonathan Denise, so I don't really see this as any kind of threat to him. Of course, it's heavyweight. Of course, anything can happen with in terms of knockout power. And sorry, my throat's been like very itchy recently, but and sometimes heavyweights just aren't as good as you think they are sometimes. It feels like you give heavyweights some hype, and then just like any given random performance, they look like absolute shit. But I'm going with Jonathan Denise. I think he can get this done by finish. I'm not too sure. Maybe most likely knockout. I'd probably say it's most likely for it to be a knockout. And I say it pretty early on too. Next up on the fight, Nico Price versus Jacoby Smith. Guys, look, Nico Price and the big 2025. That's all I gotta say. Those are all my thoughts on this fight. So I'm going with Jacoby Smith. Probably by decision. I think Nico Price is sometimes a little trickier to put away, but maybe Jacoby gets a finish, but I probably see this fight going the distance. Also because he's pretty green as well. But I'm going with Jacoby Smith. Starting off the prelims, we have Terrence McKinney versus Vyacheslav Borshev. Now, McKinney is always a risky pick because he can always get finished. But Borshev is 2-2-1 in the UFC. He's had good activity, but I don't really like the caliber of opponents that he's lost to. Right? I now, I'll be honest, I can't really name out none off the top of my head. I think the only good, did he fight Nolan North? You know what? I'm gonna just check right here. I'm gonna check. We're gonna look at this. Is that Tim Nolan? Yeah, I think that's Tim Nolan, right? Yeah. See, look, like this is the one, that really I really did not like. A split decision with James Lontop, and Lontop is pretty trash. And I knew that even in his fight versus like somebody of higher caliber like Mauricio Rufi, that it can seem like that, but I don't know. I feel like Lontop is just trash. But back to what I was saying about McKinney and not yet, mamas. What I was saying about McKinney and Borshev. I do want to go for McKinney, but it's just I see McKinney winning more likely than I see the chances of him getting knocked out. So I'm gonna go with McKinney, but I think like 3 out of 10 times Borshev probably gets a KO. So moving on to the next fight, Vivian Araújo versus Tracy Cortez. I think y'all know who I'm picking, man. Y'all know I gotta go Tracy Cortez, man. I gotta go Tracy Cortez, man. I don't gotta explain nothing to y'all, man. I'm going Tracy Cortez. Always gotta support your own. Always gotta support yours, man. Next up on the card, Hyder Emil versus Jose Miguel Delgado. Hyder Emil is surprisingly the underdog in this fight. I know he's a lot older, but he's still undefeated. And he was the underdog, and I believe in his last fight as well. I don't remember who it was exactly, versus William Gomez. That's a very good win. That's a very good win to have on your resume. Jose Miguel Delgado, I know a lot of people are hyped about him. I think he was on Dana White's Contender Series, if I remember correctly. Yeah, just by this grayed out picture, I'm already knowing he's from Dana White Contender Series. But I can't. I truly can't speak. I can't attest for him. I can't. I don't really. I'm not too. I'm not too sure of where he stands, and with a lot of prospects, I try not to put them over other stable, steady vets or people, experienced people that have had steady careers, right? And Hyder Emil has had a pretty steady career for now. I mean, he's a lot older. He's also not very experienced, but I think, um, man, I don't know. I just got to go with Hyder Emil. I don't. I think Delgado is just one of the few times on this card that people are that their odds look better than what they should be in reality just because of the hype behind them, right? And I'm going to talk about that later once we get to those people. But I think William Gomez is a really good win, and I think his win over Connor Matthews, was it? Just isn't, it's not anything you can compare to. Like, Hyder Mill is practically um, top 25 region featherweights right now. Maybe even top 20 after beating William Gomez. You can debate that, but um, I don't think, because William Gomez was definitely like top 25 featherweights in the UFC, and Connor Matthews, he isn't one. He's one of the lower end of fighters, I would say. So I'm gonna go with Hyder Mill. If Delgado is as good as people are hyping him up to be, then I'd probably have it going all 3 rounds. Yeah. And then moving on to the headliner of the prelims, Jack Hermanson versus RoboCop. I'm gonna go with RoboCop. I know he did get knocked out in his last fight versus Jared Cannonier, but he was doing very well, right? And this is only and that was him stretching himself thin in a 5-round main event fight. I think he can do a lot better at pacing himself in this 3-round fight to be able to put out enough output to cause a lot of damage, and as well as keeping some left in the tank. So, and has Hermanson ever been finished? He has. He has. I'm trying to see how many hard hitters he's fought. Not many. So you know what? It seems like he can definitely get knocked out by someone that hits hard. I know that he didn't versus Joe Pyfer, but Joe Pyfer isn't as good as RoboCop is, in my opinion. Or maybe just objectively, right? I think that's kind of objective, to be honest. But I think RoboCop is pretty balanced everywhere. I think he'd be able to keep himself up on the feet if Jack Hermanson ever tried to play on the ground a bit or shoot for a takedown. RoboCop has really good striking, really good power, and he's very big. He's massive. He's a massive person. So I think that's gonna play a lot into it, and I think he can. Low key. I'm gonna go RoboCop by KO. RoboCop, second or third round KO. Yep. And then finally we get to the main card. Starting off the main card, Payne Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Guys, look, I like Payne Talbot, right? But Felipe Lima has had a more impressive streak in the UFC for me. Payne Talbot, the best level of competition he's fought was Raoni Barcelos, and that's obviously the fight that he's most known for right now because it's the fight he lost, right? And that doesn't take away from Talbot from being skilled. I think Talbot is very skilled. I just think sometimes you don't have enough, and he didn't have enough experience in that fight to know how to deal with Barcelos's grappling and just kind of shutting him down. And we all know Payne Talbot is extremely skilled on the feet, right, with incredible power as well. But Felipe Lima, when we just look at what he's done so far in the UFC. He's coming off his last fight. Yo, can I check his thing, please? He's beaten Naimov, and I believe that fight was on short notice. I think he did that coming off of the regional scene, right? And Naimov just got a win last week, right, at Azerbaijan. Yeah, he just got a win last week. Naimov is like a pretty solid featherweight as well. He's pretty up there in terms of unranked featherweights. And then beating Miles Davis. Oh no, wait. No, yeah, that was that featherweight. Yep. Stay hydrated. But Felipe Lima versus Miles Johns, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, there we go. Yeah. This was also a very good win. He shut down Miles Johns. I said Mike Davis, bro. I'm tripping out. I meant Miles Johns. He shut down Miles Johns pretty well in that last fight. Um, and Miles Johns is considered to be one of the higher echelon of bantamweight fighters. A lot of people are scared of him. Um, or we're scared of him because of his power and his ability to kind of brawl his way into a KO. And Felipe just had none of that. Like he was doing very well on the feet as well against him. Um, and he really shut him down too with the grappling, and that's the main aspect that I'm looking at in this fight. I think Felipe Lima can apply a similar game plan that Barcelos did on Talbot, and maybe if Talbot has made the proper improvements, then this gives him a better edge. But I think regardless, just in terms of who's more well rounded, I like Felipe Lima more. I think he has better odds. He also has a lot of finishing potential. Miles Johns was pretty hard to finish in the last fight, but Felipe Lima was getting those openings, right? He was opening up the back. Well, when he was on his back, he was opening up opportunities for the choke, but Miles Johns was just able to defend it, just because he was so like big and meaty and kind of no neck, you know. And Talbot isn't really that. He's more lanky. It's a lot easier to get these openings and these gaps for different positions and different chokes and submissions. So I'm gonna go with Felipe Lima. I think he is going to apply the same game plan as Barcelos did. I think he's gonna try to match him with him on the feet a little bit just to kind of prove where he's at. Um, and then he'll take the fight to the ground, or he mixed it up very well against Miles Jones as well. So I'm not too surprised if he just consistently mixing it up in the fight. And he's gonna shoot for a takedown somewhere on the cage, probably take the back, ride the back, maybe ride it out for a round or two. Um, or I mean, in the either in the first or the second. And I think he gets a submission. Honestly, I think he gets a rear naked choke on Payne Talbot, which is kind of sad because I like Payne Talbot. I don't want his hype to die off. But after this fight, people are gonna be like, "Oh, he lost to nobody." People like casuals are gonna say he lost to nobody, and then he's gonna lose all his hype. But yeah, I am gonna go with Felipe Lima by submission for this fight. Moving up on the card, Benil Dariush versus Hanato Moicano. This is another fight that I'm very, very confused about because I like Moicano's streak right now, but I can't deny that Dariush has probably just been dealt a bad hand of cards recently. I think if you look at his last couple of fights, the only people he's lost to has been Arman and Charles, right? And before that, he beat Gamrot, Turner, right? You know what? I'm not gonna try to go off memory. I'm just gonna look. Right, we're just gonna look at this. Yeah, he beat Gamrot. He beat Tony. This is too far back. Okay, you know what? These two are also too far back. So, in their last three, right, in their most recent fights, he lost to Saryukian, and he lost to Oliveira. Moicano presents none of the same challenges that Dariush faced in these two fights. In these two fights, what happened was Arman has just surprisingly overwhelming power, right? And Dariush just doesn't have that great of a chin anymore, right? Same thing with his Oliveira one, right? He got head kick TKO'd. Do I expect? Hold on. Do you guys expect Moicano, Renato Money Moicano, to throw any head kicks? I don't think so. And this was a great win. This was a great win for Moicano right here, beating a um highly rated prospect. I think Dariush does the same thing to him. Maybe he's a little bit more wary with the chin stuff, and that's still a factor into this, right? Like this fight doesn't really count. I ain't even gonna lie. This fight doesn't even really count. But if like we're really looking at it, you know, Dariush has only lost to the last two number one contenders at lightweight. And Moicano, last loss is to the champ. Nothing wrong with that, but he wasn't prepped for that, right? And I kind of don't want to bring this up, but he almost lost to Jalen Turner, right? And Dariush has very clean. I gotta clean my screen real quick. Dariush is pretty underrated in the striking. He has solidly clean strikes, right? And he's very dynamic too. He can throw elbows in the clinch. He can just throw elbows just in the pocket and shit, spinning elbows. He has the tools to stay relevant at lightweight, and that's what he's done so far. And Dariush is better tested against other grapplers in the division, unlike Moicano. People could say like Benoit Saint Denis, but like yeah, he out grappled him 100%, but I don't know. I don't think it's too crazy. You know what I'm saying? Gamrod is absolutely one of the best grapplers at lightweight, right? Like that's no question about it. And Dariush beat him, even though it went to submission. I mean decision and all. Some people have their own opinion about how that fight could have went. But Dariush hung in there for 15 minutes straight, right? Offense and defense. And he's also just a more accomplished grappler. He's a ADCC brown belt champ. I think that was back in like 20. It was way back when, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you though. And I think Moicano is just one of these guys that, he starts out as a grappler. He was pretty good at it. He was never champ. He was never, I guess, proficient enough of a winner in it to let's say realistically do the same thing Dariush did. Right? He's just one of these guys that was very good at grappling, had size on him, and then had to learn how to strike. But he was always gonna have that grappling advantage over people because he was doing it for so long already. So that's how I look at it. But it's very real. Moicano can catch Dariush and maybe one of the grappling exchanges, and get a dominant position and start putting on some serious ground and pound, which is what I worry about. I don't necessarily worry about Moicano knocking him out on the feet though. I don't know. I don't know if this. I'm not really too sure if this is considered underdog. I think it's like a pick 'em odds. But I'm gonna go with the underdog in Beneil Dariush. I think he's still good enough, and I think he's recovered. After his last couple of fights enough um, to still put on a very solid or good performance over Moicano. And then my main event. My main event. Wait, what? I take that back. I have to fight myself. Brick MMA versus me. Alright, my bad. I think that was trash. But Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. I don't like these odds at all. If I gotta put down the act, I think Brandon Royval, and I love Joshua Van, but I think Brandon Royval is too established at flyweight. He also has the range over Joshua Van, and I think that's gonna give him some struggles. It's the dynamic striking of Roy Vol, of throwing knees up the middle, throwing elbows as well. I think that causes problems because we've seen Joshua Van be affected by these things, right? And I think people overrate where Joshua Van's striking stands so far. People are saying he's a mini Max Holloway, which is correct in the boxing aspect, but he doesn't have the same durability. He absolutely can be knocked out. And people, and I saw this clip. Like, I don't like to watch anybody's videos before I make my own, right? And I know I'm making mine mad late. But bro, for real, fucking MMA guru said Joshua Van would knock out Brandon Royval. Or maybe I'm forgetting, maybe I'm not remembering that correctly or whatever. But that's absolutely insane. Royval is taking hard shots from Kai Kara France, Brandon Moreno, Alex Pantoja. Who else? Who else has he fought? Regardless, Brandon Royval's chin has never been much of a question, and Joshua Van's KO power isn't really there. I'm gonna be honest. He overwhelms people by doing damage over time. And I think that isn't like that's what happened with Bruno Silva. He took too much shots over time and just fell apart afterwards. Royval is very durable, right? He has a very great chin, and it's still possible that maybe towards his body more, that he sustains too much damage, and maybe gets a little weaker throughout the fight. But and then we also have to take into consideration pace. Royval, they both have great cardio, but I think Royval has put on insane numbers of throwing out strikes in 5-round fights that I feel like he can just absolutely overwhelm Joshua Van, especially if this fight enters the third round. Brendan Royval is absolutely gonna get a KO over Joshua Van. I think he's just going, like, it's not gonna be like something brutal though. I'm just saying he's gonna put him on the pressure, or they're gonna start exchanging in the pocket. They're gonna start throwing crazy, and then Royval gets hit, Van gets hit. Van has to cover up because he doesn't take shots as well. Van has to cover up, and then Royval is just continuously throwing a barrage, a Gatling of strikes, and the ref sees this, and then he sees Van can't really defend himself, and then he starts opening himself up even more, and then we get to see, and then we see the doctor stop, and then and then we see the ref stop it, and I think we can even see Royval start to try and show levels to this. He might even go for some takedowns or some submissions of some sort. Royval can still do that at his like, he's still in his good years of fighting. This is too early of a fight for Joshua Van. I love Joshua Van, man, but I think this is just too high of a jump up in competition. I don't even think Joshua Van could be. I'm not too confident he could be a Steve Erceg right now. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think Steve Erceg necessarily beats Brandon Royval. So, I think Royval is just way too complete. And I love the hype. I love the activity of Joshua Van. But sometimes hype doesn't equate. It's not like a Zenkai boost. If y'all know what that is, like it's not like a Kaioken. You don't just get stat multipliers the more active you are. And it's like, even if you like semi do, Joshua Van is like, all right, let's say like Brandon Royval is like what, like level, let's just say, all right, just, I'm not saying he's 10 out of a 10 fighter, he's just level 10, right? Let's say Joshua Van is like level 5 right now. With the stat boost, he's probably like a level 8. And because even then, it's not enough to beat somebody as complete as Royval. I think Royval is like Joshua Van's worst nightmare. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I don't care. I don't even care because I would love to see Joshua Van get the title shot afterwards. But I'm gonna go with Brandon Royval most likely by 29-28. I think Van can win a round for sure. So I'm gonna give it 29-28, Brandon Royval or Brandon Royval third round finish. Next up, we move to the co-main of the card: Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. Um, this one is also very very pertain to me. I absolutely love the flyweights. I also do like Pantoja, Brandon Royval, Joshua Van, love baby. So like seeing all of them fight on one night is amazing, but it hurts my heart because knowing that they have to fight each other soon enough. Um, I think Pantoja, and I said I would stop talking about the 35 thing because Volk beat it. All right. So I think Pantoja is very skilled. He's obviously a better grappler all around than Kai Kara France, and that's absolutely the approach that I think he's gonna take because it's the approach that he's taken in every fight. I think in striking the skills can be somewhat matched. I really liked what I saw from Pantoja versus Kaya Sakura though. Um, Using leg kicks, using more body kicks, and bro, he just put on a great display over Kaya Sakura. But Kai Kara France um, has very good takedown defense, and God, I really don't want to say good striking though, because I think it's kind of just the same combo all the time from Kai Kara France, and I think I at least hope to God Pantoja watches some film to acknowledge that, right? And he's still shown that he's extremely durable, right? He took like a really hard knee um from Kai Sakura. It was like a flying knee to like his chest or some shit. I might not remember that correctly, okay? But um do I think like there's a possibility? I think out of everybody at flyweight, the only person possible right now today is Kai Kara France. Anybody right now that could knock out Alexander Pantoja is Kai Kara France. But can I trust that he can get it? Not so much. You know, uh, I kind of want to talk about the Albazi. So look, one thing I do want to mention though is if I haven't seen Kai Kara France training with anybody that CKB usually trains with for grappling, like Craig Jones as such. So I haven't seen anything of that. So I can't attest to whether or not Kai Kara France becomes prepared. Because honestly, working with Craig Jones, bro, that shit instantly prepares you, bro. That shit is actually a stat boost. That shit is fucking King Kai putting his palm on you and giving you powers, bro. That's what that is. Not like no glaze. That's literally what how every fighter has come out to fight against a grappler looks like. Like you're like, you're worried because they never fought nobody like this, and then they come out and show like, oh, I can fight against somebody like this now, right? Even if they weren't ready before, they can now. But um, and even though Kai Sakura didn't perform that well, Pantoja still took 2 rounds to get him out, and I think Kai Kara France is a lot better than Kai Sakura, and especially in terms of takedown defense and overall bottom game. I don't think Kara France is gonna be a fish out of water. I know a lot of people see him as a striker, but he's been in the UFC long enough. He's beat he's beat a striker like Askar Askarov, who also beat Pantoja, but that was a long time ago. And also on top of when they fought each other, that was a long time ago. Kai Kara France that said that shit was like 9 years ago. And it practically was. That's how long their careers have been. But I think overall, just I'm gonna go with Pantoja. I can still trust that he's durable enough to eat the shots. Um, Kai Car France hasn't really has I don't think he has knocked anybody out that's had a good chin, right? Like most flyweights don't have that great of a chin. They just have solid enough to take the shots of other flyweights. Pantoja, Moreno, Royval, they all have great chins. They could all probably take a shot from like a super strong bantamweight. Like they could probably take a shot from shit. Who could I say? Who could I say? Um, maybe if they moved up as well, they could probably take a shot from like Peter Yan, or they could still take a shot from Figgy. Right, Figgy is extremely powerful. Pantoja was eating those shots as well. And that's just the most likely person. That's just the closest person I can see to Pantoja. But Kai Car France isn't as offensively skilled in grappling like somebody like Figgy was. Like Figgy was the absolute kryptonite to Pantoja. Kai Car France is enough to give Pantoja a hard time, but I don't think he's enough to beat him. So I'm gonna go with Alexander Pantoja. Um, I think he gets a finish. I think he gets a finish later on though. Round 4, round 5 submission over Kai Car France. And now, my GOAT versus Ilya Topuria. Now, first of all, the odds, I can't blame. A lot of people were saying the odds are crazy. Guys, you can't blame them, man. You cannot blame them. Like Ilya does have insane power, right? We all know this. We all know this. But the best display of power he had was over Max Holloway and Josh Emmett. And I know he didn't knock out Josh Emmett, but the reason I brought him up is because you could just see how much every shot hurt Josh Emmett. Like his face was absolutely blown up and swollen and bruised after the entire fight. And bro, I don't even know. Like that probably took like 20 years off his life, bro. Honestly, honest to God. But obviously the most impressive one was Max Holloway because he was never knocked out before, and he was known for taking all these hits. Um, and Charles is known for getting hit. We all know the GOAT gets hit, guys. And I like I like Charles's approach versus Mike Chandler, and I think if he took maybe a similar approach with more inclination to defend himself with a better guard and excuse me, hold on. And I guess no, because then that would get too risky. I was gonna say if you got more aggressive, in the striking maybe, but again, like I said, his habit of dropping his hands a little bit or leaving himself open for counters it's very much there. Um, I have noticed though that Ilya may be a little bit scared of Charles's grappling. He only ever mentioned it when he was at featherweight, when it kind of seemed a little less likely for it to happen. That he said him being able to submit Charles would be, that he could do that or some shit like that. Um, he said that about Islam and such, but I think Ilya is a little bit scared of Charles Oliveira's striking. I mean, submission game. Ilya's main thing has always been talking to people, like talking trash towards people about beating them where they're best at. I think Ilya knows, like versus Max versus Volk, Ilya knows that I can knock these guys out. I have the skill and I have the power to knock these guys out. But I don't think he knows. I don't think he. I think he knows he cannot. He cannot get into a bottom grappling exchange with Charles Oliveira. If Charles, because Charles is massive. He's a massive guy. Even though he looks very like lean, he's very dense, and he's a lot taller than Ilya, which may give him some trouble with like some submissions, like maybe like the rear naked choke that Charles loves and is so known for. But it offers up the opportunity to latch on more. But with Ilya, it's always gonna be hard to enter these exchanges without possibly getting caught. And um I think Charles has a good mindset with the game plan that putting Ilya on the back foot, I think that's very good. I think that's smart because all of the knockouts that Ilya has ever done or all his best moments have been what the fuck? I just took some shit off my mic. All of his best moments have been when he's on the with forward pressure. You know? Uh Charles has high finishing potential, right? But you just can't. I don't know if he's durable enough. I liked what he showed for my against in his Michael Chandler fight, showing range, being able to play a little bit smarter, a little more defensive. But even when he was on the forward foot, he was still managing to get hit really bad by Michael Chandler and put him in a very bad position. It showed a little bit of durability, but I don't like that. That's too scary for Charles, bro. And I think if Ilya just man, like I really just think that it's Ilya's power, man. It's Ilya's power. Ilya is absolutely able to get finished as well if Charles hits him hard enough, and I think Charles can maybe like stun him a bit. But I think Ilya could probably take Charles's shot better than Charles could take Ilya's shot, and that's just gonna be the difference in this fight. Unless Charles Oliveira comes out with an absolute Pantoja level chin, I don't see him winning this fight. I think he's gonna have a great moment. I think he's gonna show a flash of what could have been, but then all those dreams just shatter when Ilya knocks him out. So I'm gonna go with Ilya. Maybe I think it goes. I think hopefully it goes past round one. Hopefully it goes past round one. But I think I see our go. I think we see our go down in the third, under 3 rounds for sure. Yeah, it sucks to see. It's gonna be a rainy day. It's gonna be a very rainy day, man. But yeah, that was a video for UFC 317 International Fight Week. Y'all let me know your thoughts. Let me know who y'all think is gonna win. Like, comment, subscribe, and goodbye.